Collective behavior is everywhere. Bird flocks, fish swarms, and human societies. These are fascinating systems, but researchers are still puzzling over the nature of collective behavior. Why and how do different species engage in it, and what is it all for? Here at the Center for the Advanced Study of Collective Behavior at the University of Konstanz, researchers have come together to work on many fascinating topics centered around the theme of collective behavior. From social learning in songbirds, to children's interactions in classrooms, to massive swarms of tiny robots, we've got it all. With this podcast, we'd like to give you insight into our lives and work as collective behavior researchers at the Lake of Konstanz in Germany, and hopefully spark your own sense of curiosity in this fascinating field of science as well. In this episode, we're going to tell you about who we are, why we're here, and the ideas and drive behind the conception of the podcast. As the current main hosts of the podcast, you'll be hearing a lot of my voice. Hi, my name is Nax Smith. I'm a postdoctoral researcher whose main interests are basically centered around cognitive psychology. In 2022, as a psychologist and a newcomer to the cluster of collective behavior, I was completely fascinated by the wealth of knowledge and intrigued by all of the research topics and questions I found myself surrounded by. So I basically caught myself thinking how cool would it be if I could convince my new colleagues to sit down with me and tell me about their current research in a way that even a lay person like me would be able to understand. And thus, the first idea that would lead to this podcast was born. And now it's my absolute pleasure to introduce you to the rest of the podcast team. Basically, people who I managed to lure into putting their blood, sweat, and tears into making this pipe dream of mine happen. Let's start with Christophe. Hi, Christophe.
Hi, Nak. Yes, so I'm Christophe Bousquet. I arrived from France and I was studying biology. And then I arrived at the cluster to work in a psychology lab. So I was always interested in why individuals form groups and how they change their behavior when they are in groups. And currently what I'm doing here at the cluster is basically focusing on how humans interact with each other when they are eating together. And this is very fascinating because we are shaped to eat together since a very, very long time. So in this podcast, I'm also doing some editing and I'm also involved in trying to bring to you some more specific explanation of some concept that try to make it more understandable. And actually do that with Alex, who is going to introduce himself.
Thanks, Christophe. Yeah, so my name is Alex Chan. I'm a PhD student in the cluster. I'm a biologist, mostly working on developing computer vision methods to study birds and doing posture tracking of birds across bird species. And yeah, as Christophe said, we'll have some explanation parts throughout the podcast. So you'll hear me and Christophe's voice throughout and hope you enjoy the podcast.
So that was Christophe and Alex from the explanations part. Let's now move on to the guys behind the curtains. First, Albert.
Yeah, thanks, Nax. That's great. My name is Albert van der Veer. I have moved to Konstanz about a year and a half ago and joined the cognitive psychology group. About a year ago, I joined the cluster, and in the cluster, I study potential synchronizations between people in dyads and in groups. And I look at physiology, posture, body movements, and how they might synchronize in different social situations where, for example, people are collaborating or in competition. And the podcast, I try to contribute to anything coming up. I have no specific role, but I try to join in whenever I'm needed.
In short, he's basically in charge of asking all the very difficult questions that I then pose to the interviewers. And now we have Akila.
Hi, thanks, Nak. I'm Akila and I'm a PhD student at the cluster. I'm studying how fruit fly larvae interact with each other and how the brain is involved in determining these interactions. Listening to scientists talk about their work is what made me want to pursue research. So I've been really passionate about science communication, which led me to join the podcast and help in editing some of the episodes.
And now we're going to go to Chiyu.
Hi, this is Chiyu. I am one of the editors in this podcast program. You probably won't hear my voice in the following podcast, but I am important.
Yes, Chiyu is very important. All of the podcast experience that you will be getting from us, Chiyu is in charge of. So if you're unhappy, you can write
yes to chiyu.lee.
Thank you. And now we have one, if not the most important person behind the scenes. Chiyu will argue with me, but Kira, who is our basically very first editor and the person who worked so hard for us to make all of this happen. Would you mind introducing yourself?
Hi, thank you, Nak, first of all. I'm Kira McCaffrey. I work as a student assistant in science communication here at the Cluster of Excellence Collective Behavior. For the podcast, I help out with the organization and the editing, as well as kind of keeping everybody on track throughout the production process.
Yep, without you, we will be in shambles.
This will probably be the first and the last time you will hear my voice, but since I'm behind the scenes, I hope you enjoy listening.
And now we move on to the last but not least, Rafa.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rafa. Thanks for introducing me. I'm part of the podcast, first of all, because I think the podcast is an amazing outlet for science communication and to discuss the passion that people have for science. I'm a postdoctoral researcher who is studying social behavior and communication and emotions in primates, and that includes humans. I'm doing some editing and feedback, and I'm sort of a quality control officer in a good way. So, thanks.
And that's it from our core team. In this season, we'll be interviewing researchers working in the cluster, both from the University of Konstanz as well as the Max Planck Institute of Animal Behavior. And once you're done with the current episode, episode 0, you can go ahead and enjoy the first episode that's already been released. After this, our episodes will be released bi-weekly. And that's it from us. We really, really hope you enjoy your time with us. Welcome again to In the Swarm.